You see all the chaotic headlines about U.S. economic policy, right? Well, one source suggests there's a hidden plan, a massive one, designed to completely reshape global finance from the ground up. Let's break down what they're saying. So, in this explainer, we're going to dive into three key pieces of this theory. First, a growing crisis of trust in official economic numbers. Then, the idea that all these tariffs are really just a big smokescreen. And finally, we'll look at a wild, speculative new system our source calls Bretton Woods 3.0. All right, so where does this all start? Well, according to our source, it kicks off with a really fundamental problem, a growing distrust in the official U.S. economic data, the very numbers the entire world has relied on for decades. And that really makes you wonder, right? Can we still trust the numbers that drive global markets? We're talking about the big ones here, like inflation rates and those all-important non-farm payroll figures, which are basically the main report card on U.S. job growth. To really drive this point home, the source brings up this one key moment. The head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases data showing things are looking up, but those numbers get dismissed publicly. That director was gone soon after, and what our source claims really shook the confidence of global markets. So what's the fallout from all this? Well, it's led to this huge shift. The source argues that as trust in official government numbers disappears, the market is starting to lean on private data from places like Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley to make their big financial decisions. Okay, so if the very foundation, the data, is shaky, what about the policies that are built on top of it? This is where the source presents the whole chaotic U.S. tariff policy not as the main event, but as a potential smokescreen. And if you want to understand the why behind this supposed smokescreen, our source says you just have to look at this one number. And it is a jaw-dropper, the U.S. national debt. We're talking over $37 trillion, and it's growing faster and faster. It's this massive structural problem with no easy fix in sight. So this brings us to what the source calls the stalling tactic theory. The idea is that this confusing back-and-forth tariff war, it isn't the real story at all. It's just a calculated diversion to keep the markets busy and distracted while a much, much bigger plan gets put into motion behind the scenes. And get this, the source highlights the existence of this so-called Plan B, which uses some old trade acts to get around Congress. The fact that a plan like this even exists suggests that the public policies might not even have full political support, which just reinforces that idea that the real action is happening somewhere else entirely.
Okay, now we get to the real heart of this theory, the absolute core of what the source is suggesting, a hidden blueprint to fundamentally remake the entire global money system, a plan they've dubbed Bretton Woods 3.0.
Now, to get what's happening, you kind of have to look back at how we got here. We had Bretton Woods 1.0 after World War II when the dollar was backed by gold. Then, when that ended in the 70s, we got 2.0, the petrodollar system, and now, the source speculates, we could be on the very edge of 3.0. So, what is this Bretton Woods 3.0? Well, according to the source, think of it like a self-contained financial engine, and its main purpose? To create a brand new, powerful, and kind of self-perpetuating demand for U.S. government debt. Okay, so here's how this proposed financial loop would work, step by step. Step 1. Revalue the country's gold reserves, all 8,133 tons of it, to create almost $1 trillion in new value on the books. Step 2. Funnel that new value into Bitcoin, which would pour fuel on the crypto fire. Step 3. As the crypto market booms, so does the demand for stable coins, those digital currencies pegged to the dollar. And step 4, and this is the kicker, because those stable coins are mostly backed by short-term U.S. debt, this whole loop creates a huge, new, built-in buyer for that debt. A plan this huge, this ambitious, it's not happening in a vacuum, right? So how is the rest of the world supposedly reacting to these moves on this global chessboard? Yeah, you guessed it. The other big players on the world stage are not just sitting back and watching. The source claims countries like Germany, Japan, and especially China are already making their own strategic moves. For instance, Hong Kong is rushing out its own stablecoin regulations, trying to either counter this new system or at least adapt to it. The source uses this really powerful metaphor to question the whole logic here. It's basically asking, can a system really pull itself up by its own bootstraps, or hair in this case? Can it create its own demand out of thin air and actually sustain itself? It seems like a financial impossibility, but the source suggests it's being actively pursued. And that's what it all boils down to, really. It leaves us with this final, really provocative thought from the source material. Is this whole alleged plan a brilliant, totally unconventional bit of financial alchemy that could solve an impossible debt problem? Or is it just a dangerously unstable castle in the air, doomed to collapse? And that's the key question we're left with from this explainer.